That's a sign.
Yes. The word for spirit is pneuma, which is wind. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? All right. Good morning, everyone here in the building this morning. Where's all this wind coming from? My papers are being moved by the Spirit.
The spirit of the fan.
Yes. Okay, good morning, everyone. Ceaseless Love today. There should be plenty of handouts this morning with plenty of good information on them. This quarter, we're doing Hope in the Lord. This is the second month of it, July. We're doing Ceaseless Love. I checked, and Ceaseless Love is not actually in any of our Bibles. They have mostly Steadfast Love or Great Love. So this is Lesson 6, Lamentations 3:16 through 20. Okay, turn this on. It works better. All right, so here's our key verse. Comes from Lamentations 3. Verses 22 to 23. This is from the NIV, so it reads a little bit differently than what we're used to in the ESV or NASB. It says, because of the Lord's great love, as opposed to steadfast love, because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed. For his compassions will never fail. Plural compassions. He has many different compassions. They will never fail. They are new every morning, renewed every morning. Great is your faithfulness. So that's our key verse from the lesson this morning, Ceaseless Love. So part 2, month of July, it will be on expressing hope. June was mostly, well, it was all New Testament passage. So we see here in the month of July, we're going to be in the Old Testament, and then August move back to the New Testament. So we'll be in Lamentations today, and then we will do Psalms. Psalms will be the rest of the month. So hope, that's our theme for this quarter. Today's lesson, what is the hope? Last week we did Acts 26, and the hope was in the resurrection, that God raises people from the dead. Today's hope is in God's never-ending mercy and his steadfast love, or his ceaseless love. Now, as I was working on this lesson, going through the introduction, I said, this stuff sounds familiar. And then I said, wait a minute, I think we did Lamentations before. You think so?
I think so.
And let's confirm. That look familiar?
Yeah.
Who is that guy?
I think he brought a big stomach that day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he brought it that day. But at least he wasn't full of hot air, though.
That's true.
Okay. All right, look. Can somebody read the first question, lest we forget? What was the first question? When was the last time you heard a sermon or lesson from the book of Lamentations? No one shouted out an answer. I think I said, well, today. So we have an answer to your question today. The last time we had a lesson from Lamentations, July 23rd, 2023. So it hasn't been a year yet. We're doing well. That lesson was from Lamentations chapter 5, and I think the lesson was the nation's plea. And I rewatched that YouTube, and I've got, you got some of the same introductory material, but I've got some of the different ones too. And his third bullet, why not studying? We don't like to dwell on pain and suffering, which is what Lamentations does. We like joyful stuff. We like joyful.
Pain and suffering.
Yeah. If you want joy, do Philippians.
Yes.
Philippians, joy. So, this is the 5th chapter. Talk about that pain and suffering. Look at the flowers there. They seen better days. This is Lamentations 5. The joy of our hearts has ceased. Our dancing has been turned into mourning. So they want to be revitalized. That's how the book ends. So here's an outline. 5 chapters. Contains 5 poems. Chapter 1, the desolation of Jerusalem. God's judgment of Jerusalem. Hoping God's faithfulness in the midst of disaster. Jerusalem before and after the siege. A prayer of restoration. If you want to see about the desolation, Jerusalem is personified in this, in Lamentations, and she is called a lady in mourning. She's a widow. I'm going to read the first 2 verses, and this is from the Net Bible. Alas, the city once full of people now sits alone. The prominent lady among the nations has become a widow. The princess who once ruled the provinces has become a forced laborer. She weeps bitterly at night, tears down her cheeks. She has no one to comfort her among all her lovers. All her friends have betrayed her. They have become her enemies. You think of the prodigal son. When he had the money, he had all these friends. What happened when the money ran out? He was feeding the pigs. Now, if you look there, look at the verses. They are all multiples of 22. 22, 22, 66, 22, 22. It's acrostic. These poems are acrostic where each verse, each line begins with a successive letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Now you look at number 3, chapter 3, 66 verses. You think, oh, that's a lot longer, right? No, it's the same size. Here is Lamentations chapter 1, verses 4 through 6. Now let's look at Lamentations 3, 4 through 6. So actually they're the same size because, verses, chapters 1 and 2, they have 6 lines of poetry per verse. Verses chapter 3, there's 2 lines per verse. So Lamentations, as I said, use the acrostic or alphabetical arrangement in which successive lines of poem begin with consecutive letters of the alphabet. Now, our translators didn't do that. That's hard to do. The most likely explanation for the use of the acrostics is that they symbolized a complete and exhaustive expression of grief, even as we might say everything from A to Z. As what did God say about himself, Lord? I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. So that Alpha and Omega is the equivalent to A to Z in the Greek. The book of Lamentations, where is it? It's in the writings. The Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh. T stands for Torah, N, Nevi'im, the prophets, and then Kevaim. It is in the last one. It's in the writings. It's in the 5 rolls, the Megillah, or the 5 scrolls. It's in the middle there. Now, these 5 scrolls are read on the 5 Jewish holidays on 5 of the Jewish holidays in the synagogue. We see the Megillah, or the 5 scrolls, are read in synagogues on the 5 annual holidays. And these are Feast of Booths, Ecclesiastes is read, Purim, Esther is read. Purim is the casting of the lots to determine the day when they were going to annihilate the Jews. So that's in Esther. Song of Solomon, they would read Passover. Ruth would be read during Pentecost. Pentecost celebrates the harvest. And of course, when did Ruth come back to the land? During the harvest. And then Lamentations, which commemorates the mourning for the destruction of the temple, 9th of Ab, but it's actually the temples. As it turns out, I don't know if it's a coincidence, but both Solomon's temple and Herod's temple were destroyed on the same day on the Jewish calendar, the 9th of Av. So we see it right there. It's called Tisha B'Av. It commemorates the destruction of both temples, and 9th of Ab, which corresponds to our month of August. So this year, that will be celebrated on the 12th and the 13th of August. So that's coming around next month. So there it is again, the law, the prophets, and the writings. And we see the writings are divided into two different eras, post-exile and pre-exile. And then Lamentations is in post-exile. Now, law, prophets, and writings are sometimes called law, prophets, and psalms, which is what Jesus did in Luke 24:44. Everything must be fulfilled that is written about me in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the psalms. So overarching, the writings are sometimes just called the psalms, since that's the largest writing within the writings. So our context, Book of Lamentation, commemorates the destruction of Jerusalem that occurred under Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian king. That we read a lot about him in Daniel. He invaded Judah a little bit earlier than that, but the temple was destroyed in 586 BC. Five poems of Lamentations are Jeremiah's, believed to be the author, his attempt to find some reason for hope in this terrible situation that they were in. And then the acrostic techniques helped in the community's memory. Keep in mind, they do not have a copy of the scrolls here. So this going from Aleph to Ta, the Hebrew alphabet, helps them to memorize this. And then the book is anonymous, but traditionally the writer has been identified as the prophet Jeremiah. Now this anonymous is more the rule than the exception. Even our Gospels, we don't have the author named. Now for Luke, we have the recipient name. So he writes to Theophilus. He doesn't go at the end, hope this explains everything, your friend Luke. There's nothing like that on there. Now with regard to Jeremiah, his name has been associated with a book, especially in the Greek Septuagint and the Latin Vulgate. The Greek Septuagint actually has a preface to the book, and the Septuagint, remember, is the version of the Scriptures, the Greek version used by the New Testament church. The Gospel writers all quoted from the Septuagint. Paul quoted from Septuagint, the writer of Hebrews, all of them quoted from the Septuagint, so they considered that to be reliable. It was prepared by, I believe, 70 Greek and Hebrew scholars in Alexandria, Egypt. The Latin Vulgate has the same preface as the Septuagint, but they add something also. And then the Talmud observes that Jeremiah wrote not only his book, but they also give Jeremiah credit for the book of Kings, which has 1st and 2nd Kings, as well as Lamentations. The interesting thing about Jeremiah is he didn't write the entire book. He only wrote 52 chapters. Jeremiah only wrote 51. Words of Jeremiah end here. It's interesting, we don't have something like this on Mark 16 after verse 8 where it says, the words of Mark end here. We don't have that. But then, so who wrote chapter 52? This is from the Faith Life Study Bible. The book of Jeremiah concludes with a historical appendix. That would be chapter 52, that closely parallels the conclusion of 2 Kings. 24:18 to 25:18. Jeremiah is unique among the prophetic books because it essentially borrows its ending from another biblical book. But if you believe the Talmud, then Jeremiah would have written that other book. So here's the two of them. Just take a moment and look at them side by side. On the left is 2 Kings, the last end of 2 Kings, and then on the right is Jeremiah 52, 1 through 3. They're pretty much identical. So, Septuagint and Latin Vulgate prologues. Here it is, the Septuagint in English. Whose Lamentations? Of Jeremiah. And then it's got the prologue there that names Jeremiah. And this was written about the middle of the 3rd century. So this is only about 250 years removed from when this happened. Okay, and it also has the acrostics in there, the Aleph and the Beth. Now here's the Latin Vulgate. And if your high school Latin is a little bit rusty, there it is. So this was AD 383 to 404. And then it also has the acrostics. What about our modern? This is the NIV, 1984. Nothing unusual there. Then we go to the 2011. Look what we got now. They added a preface. It's not the same preface that's in the Septuagint, though. This is the NASB. If you have the NASB, you'll have the Lamentations of Jeremiah. Now, this is on your handout. The events in Jeremiah's life. We want to go through this. Some of these echo Jesus' life on the left column. Called by God. He was a young man. Jesus was sent by God. For God so loved the world that he sent. Rejected by his neighbors. What happened to Jesus that first day he spoke at the synagogue in Nazareth?
He got the boot.
They wanted to throw him off a cliff. Rejected by his family. John 7:5 says even his brothers didn't believe in him. Same thing happened to Jesus. Rejected by false prophets and priests. What did the chief priests think about Jesus? They were the chief instigators in him being crucified.
He was, like Jesus, he was chosen well before his birth.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Rejected by friends. Jesus told his apostles, says, I no longer call you servants, I call you friends. His apostles were his friends. Who betrayed him? A friend, Judas. One of his close. Rejected by his audience. John chapter 6. We open, Jesus had a great number of followers. We have the feeding of the 5,000. Get the end of the chapter. They pretty much all went away. Jesus asked him, are you going to go away also? Peter says, to whom shall we go? You have the words of life. Rejected by kings. Now Jesus, I don't think he didn't appear before any kings. He appeared before Antipas, but he wasn't a king. Now there was one king who didn't reject Jeremiah. You know who that king was? Let's look. Jeremiah 39:11. Now King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon had issued orders concerning Jeremiah. This is after. Now how did he even know Jeremiah existed? He had passed these orders on through Nebuzaradan, the captain of the royal guard. He told him, find Jeremiah and look out for him. Do not do anything to harm him, but do with him whatever he tells you. So Nebuzaradan, the captain of the royal guard, Nebuchadnezzar, who was the chief officer, Nergal-Sharezer, who was the chief high official, and all the other officers of the king of Babylon sent and had Jeremiah brought from the courtyard of the guardhouse where he was being kept prisoner by his own people. He turned him over to Gedaliah, asked his representative there, take him home with you, take care. But Jeremiah stayed among the people, and that led to him being arrested again by his own people. So, let's go back to that one. He was taken captive. He was released under the orders of Nebuchadnezzar, and then he was taken captive by his own people again. And against his own wishes, against his prophecies, they went to Egypt and took him along with them. So here's some pictsist. Is at the Sistine Chapel by Michelangelo, and then here's one by Rembrandt. And what you see there on the left, that little fire there, that is supposed to be Jerusalem burning. Hope. Hope. This quarter, that's what we're studying, hope. Look at where it's mentioned in the Bible, and also where is hope not mentioned in the Bible. You see, both of them give you some ideas. So that line there divides Old Testament to New Testament, and it looks like Psalms has the most mentions. But does it surprise you? Hope is not mentioned in the Torah. Weren't they hoping for a deliverer? Hope is not mentioned. Look at Revelation. No mention of hope in Revelation. Psalms, most mentions, but you would think so because Psalms is a big book. So what if you normalize this and per 1,000 words? Now look at the New Testament. A lot of hope in the New Testament. And then we have Lamentations. It's up at the second. It's the second highest in the Old Testament. Now, first mention of hope in the Old Testament is Ruth. And it's not really a positive hope. She's trying to get her daughters-in-law to go back home, but they're refusing to go. And Ruth tells them, she said, even if I hope to find another husband tonight, and I have 2 sons, would you wait for them? So there's our hope there. Jonah. Hope. Do you mean, Jonah, hope. He's good, right? But Jonah, when he's in that great fish, he does a beautiful prayer. This is Jonah's prayer when he's in that fish. Those who pay regard to vain idols forsake their hope of steadfast love. But I, with the voice of thanksgiving, will sacrifice to you what I have vowed. I will pay. Salvation belongs to the Lord. After that, the great fish spit out Jonah. Hope in Hebrew. The word for hope in Hebrew. Notice I did that slide was based upon the English word. Generally, you're supposed to do it upon the Hebrew word. Lost in translation. You familiar with that? You know the passage in John where Jesus says, Simon Peter, do you love me more than these? Peter says, yes, I love you. And then if you're studying that, you hear, well, there's actually two different Greek words. Agapeo and phileo. Well, the same thing happens in the Old Testament with hope. 2 different Greek words. How many different Hebrew words do you think there is for hope that are in the Bible? 15 different words. 15 different words translated as hope in the ESV. And one of them, you see that the red one that comes out, that 2 of those are in Lamentations, but it can also mean wait. And the 83 mentions of hope in the Old Testament ESV. You go to the New Testament, there are 83 mentions of hope, same amount. Now let's go to Lamentations. As I said, there's Lamentations, hope is mentioned 4 times, 3 different Hebrew words. Now the one Yehel, the one there on the left, it is translated, actually, in the NIV, it's translated as wait in one of our passages. So we're used to it being hope, and it'll be translated as wait when we get there. Lamentations echoes in the book of Jeremiah. This is Jeremiah 9:1. Oh, that my head were a spring of water and my eyes a fountain of tears. I would weep day and night for the slain of my people. This is Jeremiah 9. I would weep. So it hasn't fully happened. Then we go to Lamentations. This is why I weep and my eyes overflow with tears. No one near to comfort me, no one to restore my spirit. My children are destitute because the enemy has prevailed. I would weep, I weep. Now, if you're not looking carefully, you would think that this is Jeremiah in both of them. Jeremiah is doing the weeping in 9:1. It's not Jeremiah that's doing the weeping in 1:16. If you look at the first page of your handout there, it says, sometimes Jeremiah speaks for the personified city. Jerusalem is personified in Lamentations, and Jerusalem speaks. We see, look at Lamentations 1:16 and then Lamentations 1:2. Bitterly she weeps at night. Tears are upon her cheeks. Among all her lovers there is none to comfort her. All her friends have betrayed her. They have become her enemies. So we see here the similarity between the two there. And then notice on the top, Jeremiah weeps for his people. Who does Jerusalem weep for? Her children. Now, Jeremiah was told to never marry and to never have children. So we also know that that second one would not apply to Jeremiah because he never had children. The atrocities in Jerusalem, Gordon, you mentioned this when you taught it. I will devastate this city and make it an object of scorn. All who pass by will be appalled and will scoff because of its wounds. I will make them eat the flesh of their sons and daughters, and they will eat one another's flesh during stress of the siege imposed on them by the enemies who seek their lives. In the red, I got the I triple underlined. Who's speaking here? This is God. Can you imagine God, who loves his people, saying, I'm going to make them eat the flesh of their sons and daughters? We know God doesn't like it when they offered their children in the fire. I'm sure he doesn't like it when they're cannibalistic toward their children. And then here, Lamentations, the one on the top, future tense, I will make them. Did it happen? With their own hands, compassionate women have cooked their own children who became their food when my people were destroyed. Imagine being a child at this time. Last week we had my little brother for dinner. You kind of wonder, am I on the menu next week? And you wonder, did they eat their children after they died of starvation, or did they actually kill them? Don't know. So enemies who seek their lives. Who are their enemies? Plural. Plural enemies. We know the Babylonians. But looking at the enemies, we see how deep the despair of Jeremiah is. Who are the enemies? The Lord is like an enemy. He has swallowed up Israel. He has swallowed up all her palaces and destroyed the strongholds. He has multiplied mourning and lamentation for the daughter of Judah. A little bit different than Job, right? Scripture says Job never blamed God for any of his difficulties. But here, the Lord is like an enemy. Well, can they pray to the Lord for mercy? Would that work? Lamentations 3. You have wrapped yourself with anger and pursued us, killing without pity. You have wrapped yourself with a cloud so that no prayer can pass through. You have made us scum and garbage among the peoples. How does that sound? No prayer can pass through. Does that mean if the Holy Spirit intercedes in your prayer, can't even get through? Remembering judgment, Lamentations chapter 3, verses 16 through verse 20. Memories of humiliation, they have plenty of those. Memories of despair, verses 17 and 18. Memories of bitterness. So humiliation, despair, bitterness. So no good news here.
When you pray like that, the last slide, it indicates for them, the people who are praying to God, when you have no hope, that's what you say in your prayer.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you say because of despair.
Yeah. Well, one of the earlier mentions, the only hope they had was no hope. If it weren't for no hope, we'd have had no hope at all.
Right.
Gloom, despair, and agony on me. Remember that? Was that hee-haw? So, Lamentation 3, 16 through 18. He has broken my teeth with gravel. He has trampled me in the dust. I've been deprived of peace. I have forgotten what prosperity is. So I say, my splendor is gone, and all that I had hoped from the Lord. Doesn't sound too good here. The Lord has knocked me down. He made me eat dirt. He has broken my teeth with gravel. I looked to see, is that the only mention of gravel? No, there's one other mention of gravel, and that's in Psalms. But he has broken my teeth with gravel. That's what you do to your enemies. David asked the Lord to break his enemies' teeth with gravel. Psalm 3:7, the title on this, a Psalm of David when he fled from his son Absalom. When Absalom was trying to take over as king, he says, arise, O Lord, deliver me, O my God, strike all my enemies on the jaw and break the teeth of the wicked. Break their teeth. So what happens if you got your teeth broken back then? You go to the dentist and get new ones? You're on a soft food diet, aren't you? Break the teeth. I will remember my affliction and say, wandering, the bitterness and the gall. Bitterness and gall. Not good. Some have wormwood and gall. Wormwood and gall, neither one of them were something that you wanted to eat or take. I will remember them, and my soul is downcast within me. And then comes an epiphany. He gets out of his gloom. Remembering mercy, Lamentations 3, 21 to 20. Memories of ceaseless love, steadfast love, and memories of sufficiency, verse 24. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. I don't know why, but that reminded me of the prodigal son when he was in despair. Like the lady here, once prosperous, one had all these friends, and then he ran out of money, ran out of friends. But said when he came to his senses, he thought, I have a family that I left. I can go to them, and I can be a servant in my father's household, and it'll be so much better than being here and feeding pigs. So he decided to do that. He had hope then. So therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, or steadfast love, or ceaseless love, we are not consumed. His compassions never fail. It doesn't seem like it right now. But we've been down before. Lord has lifted us up. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion. Therefore, I will wait for him. The song is, the Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I will hope. This is one of those places where the NIV has wait here. I think the ESV does have hope here. Okay, this is on your handout here. 9 life lessons from the book of Lamentations. So, first one, the painful cry of lament over the misfortune and suffering of others is a valid form of prayer, one of which God hears and answers. Laments actually were prayers. Laments in the Bible is a prayer. Lament is a prayer in pain that leads to trust. And definitely when Jeremiah did this lament, he was in pain. It's a biblical language for processing the pains of life as we cling to what we believe. Lament refuses to give God the silent treatment. We cry out to God when we're lamenting. Instead, this historic prayer language transforms pain into a platform of worship. The Bible is full of lament. 59 of the 150 Psalms are lament psalms. They can be individual laments or they can be community events. There are serious consequences when a nation or a person turns from God's ways. You could use the book of Judges as a case study. When the people turned from the Lord, turned to the evil, what happened? They got invaded. They cried to the Lord, and the Lord sent a deliverer. And that's the first mention of deliverer in the Bible is in the book of Judges. You can rest in the knowledge that God is faithful and merciful. God always is willing to forgive. Prayer is always appropriate in times of suffering. Doesn't it seem like prayer is more likely to happen in times of suffering than in times of plenty? Individuals and nations reap what they sow. God uses nations to punish other nations. We saw that here with Babylon. Saw that earlier with Assyria and the northern kingdom. Saw that plentiful times in the book of Judges. God's compassion never fails. Great the faithfulness of God to the people. Finally, God allows restoration for the penitent. And that is Lamentations chapter 5. The lesson Gordon did was called The Nation's Plea. That was for them asking for restoration, realizing that what had happened to them was their own fault because they had sinned, and they want to be restored. Okay, here's the what do you think? What are some biblical examples of God's love you can recall to bolster your hope? Any examples?
John 3:16.
Absolutely, that's the one I've thought of. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, or his unique son, so that the world would be saved. Jesus did not come to condemn the world, but to save the world. Some personal examples, you can think about this. I don't know if you agree, Gordon, but some of these questions seem to be for small group study, around your friends. Do you want to do this on YouTube? Tell the world. God's compassions are new every morning. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. It is good that one should wait quietly for the situation. salutation of the Lord. What does it mean to wait on the Lord? Provide biblical examples. Someone who didn't wait, remember, was Saul at the sacrifice? Sarah? Yes, Sarah. Lord said, you too? And she said, well, take Hagar. One good example that I have was David. I'm going to contrast David with Lady Macbeth. David was anointed king as a young man, very young, teenager. Like Lady Macbeth, the three witches that said Macbeth is going to be king of Scotland. Lady Macbeth says, well, we need to kill King Duncan. David had opportunities to kill David. David had opportunities to kill Saul, several. But he said, he is the Lord's anointed. He would not do anything. Plus, he had a problem. If David kills Saul, who becomes king? Jonathan. Jonathan was his good friend and mentor. No way David would lay a hand on Jonathan. So he waited on the Lord, and the Lord took care of it. Both Saul and Jonathan and his son died in battle. How might your faith grow as a result of waiting in God? What personal or biblical examples can you provide? Well, Hannah waited on God. Anyone else have any other ones?
Jeremiah 29:11.
What's that one?
For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future.
Oh, good. Thank you, Kate. And think of the two at the temple when they brought Jesus. He was told, you will not die until you see the Lord's Messiah. And then Anna there, the two of them, elderly, that had been waiting for the Lord's salvation.
Old Simeon and Anna.
Yeah, Simeon and Anna, those were the two. Next week is continual proclamation. Psalm 71, 12 through 21. The three Psalms are not ones that we know really well. Psalm 71, Psalm 119, we know that mostly because it's the longest psalm in the Bible. And Psalm 105, thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. And then we have Psalm 130. And I think that was the second bell, wasn't it?
Yes.
All right, thank you for your comments. So next week will be Psalm 71, or at least a part of it.
Thank you.
All right.